In Tokyo, love doesn't save you. It turns you into something unrecognizable, and by the time they realized it, it was already too late. At first, it looks like an ordinary love story. A quiet boy, a lonely girl, a cafe that smells like old books and warm coffee. But Tokyo has a way of lying to you, because beneath the neon lights in crowded streets, something else is feeding, something patient, something hungry. And love, in this city, does not save you, it devours you. Kaneki was the kind of boy the world barely noticed. He walked with his head lowered, books clutched to his chest like armor, as if words were the only thing keeping him stitched together. He believed stories were safer than people. Stories had rules, beginnings and endings, meaning people just hurt you and pretended it was accidental. That was why he liked the cafe Antioku. It was quiet, warm, smelled of coffee and peace. A place where the world outside seemed distant, manageable, and that's where he first noticed her too. She moved with practiced indifference, eyes sharp, posture guarded. She didn't smile much. When she did, it never reached her eyes. There was something broken, there's something restrained. Kaneki didn't know why, but broken things always pulled at him. Love often begins like that, not with attraction, but recognition. Two fractured souls, sensing each other through the cracks. Their conversations were small at first. Awkward pauses, half-finished sentences, shared silences that felt strangely comfortable. Touka teased him for being soft. Kaneki admired her strength. She liked how gentle he was. He liked that she didn't ask him to be anything else. But from the very beginning, the horror was already there. Kaneki just couldn't see it yet, because Touka wasn't human, and neither was the world she lived in. Tokyo was divided into predators and prey. Humans lived their lives unaware that monsters walked beside them, laughing, loving, pretending. Ghouls, creatures who looked human but survived only by feeding on human flesh. They had families, friends, lovers, and hunger. Touka had learned early that love was dangerous. Love made you weak. Love made you hesitate. Love got people killed. So when she began to care for Kaneki, fear settled in her chest like rot, because she could smell his blood, warm, fragile, human, and every moment she spent near him was a battle between instinct and restraint. Kaneki's life shattered the night he went on a date, not with Touka, with another woman. Rise, she was beautiful, confident, hungry in ways Kaneki didn't understand. That night, he learned the truth. Ghouls were real, and real love was a lie the weak told themselves before being eaten. Rise bit into him in an alley, her teeth tearing flesh like paper. Pain exploded through his body. Terror flooded his mind. He should have died there. He didn't. Instead, he woke up changed. A transplant, an experiment, a miracle turned curse. Kaneki survived. As something else, half human, half ghoul, neither alive nor dead. When Touka realized what he had become, something inside her cracked, because now, loving him wasn't just dangerous, it was impossible. Kaneki couldn't eat human food anymore. He vomited when he tried. His body rejected everything that once made him normal, and Touka knew what that meant. She forced him to eat human flesh, not gently, not kindly. She screamed at him, beat him, dragged him to the truth he didn't want to accept, because survival in their world didn't care about feelings. Horror didn't wait for consent. Kaneki cried as he chewed. Tears streamed down his face as his humanity collapsed piece by piece, and Touka watched, because if she didn't break him now, the world would break him worse later. Love, in Tokyo, was an act of cruelty disguised as mercy. Their relationship was never romantic in the way stories promised. There were no soft confessions, no safe embraces, only shared trauma, shared hunger, shared silence after bloodshed. Kaneki tried to hold on to his morality. He refused to kill, refused to accept himself, refused to stop feeling pain. Touka saw herself in him, and she hated it, because she knew where that path led. She had already walked it. The more Kaneki suffered, the more he changed. His eyes darkened, his voice hardened, his thoughts twisted. He still loved books, still believed in kindness, but now, kindness came with violence attached. Touka watched him slip further away every day, and the horror deepened, because she realized something terrifying. She didn't just care about him, she needed him. In a world built on consumption, love became another form of hunger. The city closed in around them. Ghouls hunted. Humans fought back. Death became routine. Kaneki was tortured, mind and body torn apart in ways love could not heal. When he returned, He was not the same boy. His hair had turned white. His smile was gone. And Touka understood then. The boy she loved was already dead. What stood before her was something forged in pain, a monster shaped by loss. And monsters don't get happy endings. Yet still, she stayed, because in a world of horrors, familiarity feels like comfort. Because losing him completely would hurt more than watching him become something terrifying. Because love doesn't leave when it should. It lingers, it rots, it watches. By the end of this chapter, Kaneki had crossed a line he could never return from. And Touka stood at the edge of her own breaking point. They loved each other. But love, in their world, was never meant to survive. It was only meant to transform. Into guilt, into violence, into loss. Love does not disappear when it becomes unbearable. It mutates. By the time Kaneki returned to Antiyuku after his torture, the cafe felt smaller, quieter, as if the walls themselves were afraid of him. The warmth that once filled the space recoiled in his presence, shrinking away from the thing he had become. Touka noticed it immediately. Not the white hair, not the blood-stained clothes, not even the deadness in his eyes. It was the way he stood, straight, still, ready, like someone who had accepted that pain was permanent and decided to weaponize it. The boy who flinched at violence was gone, and Touka felt something twist inside her chest. Relief, fear, guilt, because a part of her knew this was inevitable. This was always how love ended in their world, by carving away everything gentle until only survival remained. Kaneki stopped asking permission. He stopped apologizing. He stopped pretending that kindness could exist without consequence. When he spoke now, his voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that came from someone who had already screamed themselves empty. Touka watched him from across the cafe, hands clenched, heart pounding. She wanted to scream at him, to grab him, to shake him until the boy she loved came back. But she didn't, because she recognized that look. It was the same one she saw in the mirror every time she remembered killing someone for the first time. Kaneki had crossed the point where love could save him, and Touka realized something horrifying. She was no longer trying to protect him from the world. She was trying to protect the world from him. As Kaneki grew stronger, the violence around him escalated. Enemies fell, blood soaked the streets, humans screamed, ghouls disappeared. Kaneki told himself it was necessary, that every death prevented another, that becoming a monster was the only way to survive among monsters. Touka listened, and hated herself for understanding. Love had taught her to accept the unacceptable. They grew closer as everything else fell apart. Not through affection, through shared brutality. Late-night conversations turned into silent acknowledgments of what they'd done that day, who they'd hurt, who they'd lost. There were moments, brief, fragile moments, when Kaneki's voice softened, when he looked at Touka like he remembered what it meant to be human. Those moments terrified her the most, because they never lasted, and each time they vanished, something inside Kaneki died with them. The world declared him a threat, a monster beyond control. Hunters came, battles followed, and Kaneki stopped running. He stood his ground, tearing through enemies with a precision that made Touka's stomach churn. He didn't hesitate, didn't look away. She watched him kill, watched the blood splash across his face, watched him smile. That was the moment Touka realized the truth she'd been avoiding. Kaneki no longer needed love. He needed purpose. And love was getting in the way. When Touka confronted him, her voice trembled. "This isn't you." Kaneki didn't deny it. Instead, he looked at her, and said quietly, "This is what I had to become." She wanted to argue, to remind him of books, coffee, quiet moments, but all of that belonged to a world that no longer existed. Tokyo had eaten that world alive, and Kaneki had adapted. Their relationship became a silent war. Touka tried to pull him back toward humanity. Kaneki pushed forward into darkness. Each believed they were saving the other. Neither realized they were accelerating the collapse. Love, once mutual, became asymmetrical. Touka loved who he was. Kaneki loved what he represented, a reminder of what he had lost. And reminders hurt. The final fracture came without ceremony. No dramatic confession. No final embrace, just exhaustion. Kaneki stood on a rooftop, staring at the city below, lights flickering like dying stars. Touka stood behind him, unable to close the distance between them. "I can't stay," he said. The words were calm. Final. Touka felt her chest cave inward. "If you go," she whispered, "you won't come back." Kaneki nodded. "I know." That was it. No promises, no lies, because love doesn't always end with betrayal. Sometimes it ends with acceptance that staying would destroy both people involved. When Kaneki left, the city swallowed him whole. Touka screamed after him once, then never again. She learned how to live with absence, with memories that hurt worse than wounds, with the knowledge that loving him had cost her pieces of herself she would never recover, and somewhere deep inside, she wondered if loving him had been a mistake, or if it was the only human thing either of them had ever done. Kaneki's path ended in blood, in sacrifice, in annihilation. He became a symbol, a myth, a warning, a boy who loved too deeply in a world that punished softness. When he finally fell, it wasn't peaceful. There was no redemption, only silence where a heart once beat. Touka felt it when he died. Not magically, not dramatically, just a sudden emptiness. As if a sound she'd grown used to had stopped forever. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She poured coffee and watched the steam rise, hands steady, expression blank, because grief, like love, eventually stops asking for permission. Years later, the world would call Kaneki a monster. Touka knew better. He was a boy who wanted to be loved, and in Tokyo, that was the most dangerous thing you could be. If this story affected you, leave a comment, not for the algorithm but because some stories are heavier when carried alone.